Well, let's talk about our 2023 Masters champion. It is indeed Jon Rahm. He goes out, he makes that birdie putt at the start of play on Sunday in his third round on 7. He birdies 8, and he rarely looks back, Greg. He did make some bogeys, but every time he made a bogey, he was able to bounce back. If you look at what he did in his final round, it was a 3-under, 69. And then by the time we got to the second 9, and it was seemingly all he had to do was play defense and play smart golf, he did just that. It was fairways and greens all the way home. And at the end of the day, he puts on a green jacket.
Yeah, he drove the ball really well. And that was another advantage he had over Brooks Koepka. And that's something, once you get the lead, that becomes really important. So I kind of broke this down into a couple areas for me when it comes to Jon Rahm. First and foremost, his back was against the wall from 7 green. His back was against the wall on 8 and on 9. You remember on 8, Brooks Koepka gets up and down for birdie and hit it in there close, and Jon Rahm had to make a big putt to answer. But then once he took control of the lead, once he finally took control of the lead, he was able to play really smart shots. He put the ball in play off the tee and hit the right shot into the greens. And you think about what he did on this second 9 today. This is the area where you always worry about leaders losing to Masters. And at number 10, he hit the right shot. At 11, he hit a very conservative but a very smart shot into the green. Same thing at 12. Same thing at 13, getting it past the tributary to Rays Creek there. He hit a very smart, a very wise shot into 15 by laying up and the subsequent wedge shot. He played the perfect shot into 16. I mean, you go through the entire back 9, with the exception of number 18 because of the tee shot. He played a perfect round of golf, a perfect 9 holes when it comes to strategy. And you can't do that if you're chasing. When you're chasing, you have to take on some of those penalty areas. You have to take on the water to try to make something happen. But when you're leading, you don't have to do that. Now, that doesn't make it easy. It means you can play a little more conservative. And if you execute the shots, well, you end up with an invitation back here for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and you get to plan the dinner on Tuesday of next year, which is going to be awesome. Let me put this a little bit into perspective, Greg. So the final leaderboard is going to say that this was a 4-shot victory for Jon Rahm at 12 under par. He made a double on his first hole out of the gate, 4 putts. So he played his last 71 holes at 14 under. He also played in by far the worst conditions of like anybody this week, or at least his wave did. There's a chance, or in some alternate, universe, that Jon Rahm, we talk about the real lead all the time, that he really won this golf tournament by like 6, 7, or 8 shots.
And then even after what happened at number 1, Rick, I mean, think about what he did on the par 5s or in round 3, right? I mean, the second 9, both those par 5s, he is unable to. He makes a bogey. He 3-putts 13, and he 3-putts 15 for par. So he plays those holes 1 over par. I mean, that could have been a whole lot better. And what happened on the greens was a little. I mean, he had 5 3-putts for the week. You don't see a lot of that. I guess it was 4 3-putts and a 4-putt. But that is impressive. I wanted to ask you this: Does that 4-putt double at number 1 and winning the golf tournament remind you of anything? I'll give you a hint. It's somewhat recent on the PGA Tour, not in a major, not a Masters.
Tom Kim.
Yes, Tom Kim.
Yeah.
Tom Kim making a quad on his opening hole and winning.
Yeah. Hey, I guess that's all you got to do is you just got to like slap yourself in the face right out of the gate so that you're focused, and then you go and win a golf tournament. Easy solution. Rory
did it in the Tour Championship too. He made double at number 1 and caught Scotty Scheffler.
That's right.
It's a funny thing in this game. I would never advocate for starting with a double, a triple, or a quad. But I guess if there's a time when you're going to do it, the first hole is probably the best time.
I'll tell you what, and this is obviously very anecdotal, but we've been lucky enough, or we had the setup in Phoenix, and I was out at Riviera and Torrey Pines, and like I've watched a lot of Jon Rahm this year, Greg, and he is very different than everybody else on the golf course. You know, even the other elite players in the world, some of them you can tell are maybe looking around or maybe, engaging in conversation with players and caddies and whatnot. I swear Jon Rahm is the scariest dude in the world on the golf course, and he will just walk right through. Like, you don't exist on the golf course. And I feel like when he makes double out of the gate, it just like amplifies his spidey senses, and he just like gets into this mode where he is not to be messed with, and he just takes over. It's really hard to describe it.
I'll tell you, there were, a couple of years ago, this is the first time I saw Jon Rahm in person. I've seen a lot of the Florida guys in person. Jon Rahm I had never seen in person before. And I was out at the Northern Trust on the range at Liberty National. And I was facing the other way. And I heard this noise that I've never heard before. It was a completely different noise. And I was taken aback by it. And I turn around and Jon Rahm is down at the other end of the range. I mean, he must have been 40 yards away from me, and he's hitting these irons that sound, I've never heard anything like it. I've watched Tiger Woods hit a lot of golf balls from very close range. That sounds different. When Jon Rahm hits it, it was shocking. That's the only way I can explain it. And then you're right. He walks by you and you don't know what to do. It's so nerve-wracking. But what was really cool about today, Rick, is the second scariest guy to see on the range is Brooks Koepka.
When they were staring at, so they were on the tee at 16 waiting for the Cantlay Hovland group to get off, and Cantlay was doing his whole thing, and those two were staring. I was uncomfortable through my television with those two staring at Patrick Cantlay 160 yards away.
I would not want to play in the group in front of them. You're at risk of them hitting India because they're long enough to, no matter what. But if there's any sense that you're holding them up, there's not a worse duo to have behind you, because those guys are angry and they are intimidating.
A couple other things here on Jon Rahm before we get to some of the chase pack, because there was a lot of craziness throughout the day. So we've talked about this a lot on this pod. Jon Rahm's season last year was very disappointing. He had one win. The only win that he had was the Mexico Open. He was like 3.5 to 1 to win that. So even when he won it, nobody really gave him any credit for it. And when you look at it from a historical, statistical standpoint, Greg, he had an elite off the tee year. He gained over a stroke off the tee, and he was like the 12th or 13th golfer to ever do that in a season. And he got the absolute least out of it of any other guy who drove it like he did. So I think there was this perception for us that he was going to snap back at some point. There was going to be a rubber band situation. He was running under expectation, and I think we are starting to see that now. The win at the Spanish Open, the win at the DP World Tour Championship in Dubai, then he starts his 2023 year with the Tournament of Champions, the American Express, Riviera, and the Masters. Yeah, I think the pendulum has swung, Greg.
Yes, and why did he struggle last year so much? Well, it was really the short game and the putting. These were the two areas of concern. The putting got a lot of attention last year because he hit the ball so well. But over time, once we kind of got past Masters, he really started to turn it around from a statistical standpoint with the putting. But he never really recovered in the short game. And as we've seen him develop really after the Tour Championship, when you look at what he did on the DP World Tour and in these early events of 2023, that stuff started to change. And all of a sudden we started to see Jon Rahm that looked like the Jon Rahm that's, pitching in from the left side of number 13 at the Memorial. Right, this is a player with an elite short game when you look at it from a really wide lens. But last year was a struggle, and now it seems like it's back. And you look at what he did again this week. He answered that question in a big way. He led the field in scrambling this week. He was 6th in strokes gained around the green, and that was a huge factor in why he is the champion. And then the other thing I'd say, Rick, is the driving at the beginning of this year has been a little inconsistent. So if we narrow the view and look at maybe the last month or so, Jon Rahm was not the favorite coming in here. He was well behind Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy as far as expectations are concerned. And I would attribute that largely to the driving ability. But over the past 5 years, or since Jon Rahm's been on the PGA Tour, he's never been outside the top 5 in strokes gained off the tee for a season, which is just incredible. It's hard to imagine. This year he's been struggling. But what's he do this week? He leads the field in strokes gained off the tee until, through 71 holes. He ended up getting clipped by Cam Young because his tee shot didn't make it to the fairway on 18.
Oh, yeah. We didn't even mention that. He has to hit a provisional on the 72nd hole because he yanks one left, but it bounces out short of the fairway, and he's able to make no problems of it from there. Couple other things here. I guess just one other thing that I think we'd be remiss to not mention on Jon Rahm. He is a historian of the game. I think Rory McIlroy, and deservingly so, gets a lot of credit for understanding the history of the game and his place in it. And I think that Jon Rahm, for whatever reason, does not get enough credit for how much he understands the history of the game. And today is April 9th, and that is Seve Day in the world of golf. It would have been Seve Ballasteros' 66th birthday. Obviously, growing up, Jon Rahm idolizing Seve. Now trying to, surpass him in terms of major championships won by a Spanish golf. I mean, there's just so much lineage here and so much connection for this day that Rahm used as fuel, used as an opportunity to say, I'm destined for this. I'm going to go out and win this golf tournament.
Yeah, that he's aware of it. And quite frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if he knew who won the Masters the last time Sunday was in April 9th. And that would be another Spaniard, Sergio Garcia. So it's pretty cool what kind of connection and lineage we have in the Spanish golf community at the highest level. Another nugget that I heard Jim Nantz mention on the broadcast was when Jose Maria won his first Masters, he was also 28 years old, just like Jon Rahm. So there is definitely that big connection. Jon Rahm's knowledge and awareness of history is, it may be better than Rory's. It's right up there. He knows his stuff, and it seems like every time he wins, there's a historical connection, and he teaches me something in the interviews. And he's supposed to be out there playing. I'm supposed to be studying, and it seems like it's the other way around sometimes.